In 1991, Car and Driver published the results of a drag race between a $120,000 Ferrari 348s and a GMC pickup truck that cost $26,000. The truck won. Then, after a single model year, it disappeared. No successor, no public statement, no paper trail inside General Motors. The story of how it got built at all begins with one engineer who was never supposed to get this far. Kim Nielsen was a GMC marketing engineer, but his real education happened on the drag strip. His personal garage housed several Buick Grand Nationals and GNX models, the legendary black coupes that used a turbocharged V6 to run 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, making them the fastest accelerating production cars in America. Nielsen wanted that exact same mechanical violence in a light truck. He acquired a GMC S10 chassis and began retrofitting it with a turbocharged Buick engine himself. When General Motors executives scheduled product planning meetings, Nielsen did not just bring slide decks, he drove his crude, turbocharged prototype straight to corporate headquarters and parked it in front of management. The reaction inside General Motors was immediate resistance. Buick managers rejected the idea, protective of their performance crown. Chevrolet, fearing threats to the Corvette, refused to touch it. But Nielsen's persistence found a crack in the corporate armor. GMC, a division known for work trucks and utility vans, wanted a halo vehicle to redefine its brand. Where the passenger car division saw a threat, GMC saw an opportunity and greenlit the project. To build a production-ready vehicle, GMC bypassed its own massive assembly lines and turned to Production Automotive Services, called PAS, in Troy, Michigan. PAS had already proved its specialty engineering credentials by integrating the high-performance turbocharged powertrains for the 1989 Pontiac Turbo Trans Am. For the new truck, PAS dropped the concept's Buick engine in favor of GM's own 4.3-liter Vortec V6. They reinforced the internals with heavy-duty pistons, custom intake manifolds, and bolted on a Mitsubishi turbocharger, pushing 14 pounds of boost through a Garrett liquid-to-air intercooler. GM officially rated the package at 280 horsepower, though independent testing suggested the real output exceeded 300 horsepower. To put that power to the pavement without shredding the tires, PAS adapted a full-time all-wheel drive system from a Chevrolet Astro van, routing 35% of the torque to the front wheels and 65% to the rear. But just as engineering finalized, the program nearly died in a Detroit parking lot. The sole running red prototype was stolen outside an adult video store. The theft threatened to bury the project before senior management could evaluate it, but the development team recovered and repaired the truck just in time for the 1989 North American International Auto Show. Under the bright lights in Detroit, the concept truck drew massive crowds. The overwhelming public response silenced internal critics and forced GMC to commit to a full production run. In September 1991, Car and Driver published a head-to-head comparison that shattered the established automotive hierarchy. On one side stood a brand new Ferrari 348 TS, a mid-engine Italian exotic carrying a retail price of $122,180. On the other was the GMC Syclone, an all-black pickup truck costing $25,970. The drag strip results defied decades of sports car engineering. Depending on the track conditions, the Syclone recorded a 0 to 60 miles per hour sprint between 4.3 and 4.9 seconds, while the hand-built Ferrari struggled to keep pace at 5.3 to 5.6 seconds. Off the line, the Syclone's all-wheel drive system hooked instantly with 0 wheel spin, immediately jumping 2 full truck lengths ahead of the Italian supercar. It crossed the quarter-mile mark in 14.1 seconds, beating the Ferrari's 14.5-second run. The performance advantage was not limited to straight-line speed. In the 70 to 0 miles per hour braking test, the Syclone's anti-lock brake system stopped the pickup in fewer feet than the Ferrari. With the publication of these verified numbers, the Syclone officially became the fastest accelerating production vehicle available in the United States at its launch. It was a statistical anomaly, a utility vehicle outperforming Maranello's finest engineering for a fraction of the cost. The performance was no longer an engineering rumor, it was documented industry fact, and it presented General Motors with a highly public problem. General Motors responded to the sudden demand by greenlighting a production run, but under strict, deliberate constraints. Throughout the sole model year of 1991, Production Automotive Services assembled just 2,998 examples, delivering the vast majority of these trucks in uniform, menacing midnight black. The factory designed the Syclone strictly for street performance, not for farm work. It featured a significantly lowered suspension and wraparound aerodynamic body cladding that slammed its stance to the ground. To guarantee high-speed stability, engineers sacrificed all traditional utility. The vehicle carried a meager 500-pound payload capacity and possessed no towing rating whatsoever. Attempting to pull a trailer or haul heavy cargo risked instantly destroying the delicate transfer case. But the most calculated restriction was the engine rating. General Motors officially claimed the turbocharged V6 produced 280 horsepower. Industry insiders immediately suspected this figure was artificially deflated to protect corporate politics, keeping the inexpensive pickup from technically outranking the flagship Chevrolet Corvette on paper. By releasing a vehicle with such compromised utility and highly suspicious power ratings, General Motors proved they were willing to build a highly specific, uncompromising performance machine, making their next move even more baffling. The Syclone did not just reach the end of its production run, it was erased. General Motors terminated the program immediately after the 1991 model year without issuing a single public statement. A search of corporate archives yields no official termination memo, and not a single executive ever went on record to explain why America's fastest vehicle was suddenly pulled from dealership lots. In the absence of an official narrative, a convenient explanation circulated that Production Automotive Services had gone out of business, leaving GM without its specialty assembly partner. But public business records tell a different story. PAS remained solvent, continuing to build the GMC Typhoon SUV through 1993, and did not file for bankruptcy until 20 years later, in 2013. The decision to kill the Syclone came entirely from within the corporate hierarchy, driven by internal cost calculations and political hesitation. The division had already prepared a broader color palette for a 1992 production run, planning releases in apple red, frost white, and aspen green. Only 3 of these 1992 prototypes were ever assembled before the plug was pulled. The program vanished into corporate history with no paper trail and no official explanation. In 1991, the Syclone proved that a performance-focused truck was a highly viable concept. Yet, General Motors chose to walk away from the very formula it invented, leaving the door wide open. Decades later, its fiercest competitors stepped in to cash in on that exact vision. Vehicles like the Ford F-150 Raptor, the Ram TRX, and the Toyota TRD Pro now dominate a highly profitable market that GMC pioneered and then abandoned. Today, the economic irony is reflected in the collector market, where surviving Syclones command between $60,000 and $80,000, nearly triple the original $26,000 sticker price. Yet, despite this legacy, the truck remains an obscure legend, unknown to most modern drivers. General Motors proved the concept, created the market, and then walked away, leaving its rivals to reap the rewards. Today, 6-figure super trucks dominate the market, thriving on a formula GMC perfected and then buried. The corporate silence still shields the truth. General Motors didn't just cancel a vehicle, they surrendered an empire they pioneered. Share your thoughts in the comments below.